part two of my story. Well, so went through the whole I had a baby, surprised everybody. So basically what happened was an adoption agency from Abilene, Family Christian Homes, which is linked in my bio if you want to donate money for my birthday. Feel free to do it. Anyways, so they came down. The hospital, when we decided that adoption was the best way to go about this, the hospital brought in and listed 3 different adoption agencies and told me to pick one and they'd call and contact them. And I can't remember the first 2 names on the list, but I saw Family Christian Homes and something just drew me to them. So, chose them, they called them, they came down, sat down, started talking to me about what kind of adoption did I want. I wanted an open adoption. I personally heard about open adoptions from shows like Teen Mom. And, not really knowing much about it, I was kind of like, I asked the question, what is an open adoption and what does it entail? And they said basically, you always know where your child's at. You have an open relationship with the family. In the state of Texas, it's actually referred to as an open and closed adoption. Basically what that means is at any time, I can choose to close the adoption, or my birth daughter's family can choose to close the adoption. It's what they refer to as a contract of the heart. As far as I know, I've never given them a reason to want to close the adoption, and though it may be easier on me emotionally sometimes, I don't want to close the adoption because to me, I feel like I'm still part of my birth daughter's life. I get to watch her grow up, even though it's just pictures and emails back and forth. It's pretty special to have that kind of relationship and always get to know that she's doing okay. So after we talked for the first day, the hospital told me, we're going to go ahead and release you. The adoption agency gave me 2 profiles to read, as I mentioned in part 1. And so I went home, read over them. I went through some of that in part 1. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back to part 1, watch part 1. And I made my decision, told the adoption agency, this is who I decide on. And they were like, okay, so what's going to happen next? We're going to meet at the hospital. And my birth daughter was, I want to say, about 3 days old when this took place. They said, we'll meet at the hospital at this time at night. They allowed me to have one more moment with her to say bye to her, hold her, do whatever I needed to do. At this time, and I know now, the reason why my mom didn't hold her was because my mom told me later that she didn't know she could go through with it if she held her, because this was her first grandchild. And I cannot imagine how much emotion my mom was going through at the time to sit here and watch her youngest child have to make one of the toughest decisions in her life and stand behind it as a mother and be like, and be my support system and tell me it's gonna be okay. So we sat down. At the time, the adoption agency found a couple that they've been in contact with that had been through the adoption process and was willing to come talk to me before I signed my rights over, and told me basically what I was doing was a big gift that they didn't realize, that I don't realize what I'm giving to a family. And at the time, I really didn't realize what I was doing for someone else. I was just like, my mentality at the time was, let me get through this. let me power through this with as little emotion as possible. Because I didn't want to think about it at the time. I was just like, let me get through this. Yes, it broke my heart. Yes, it destroyed me for a while. But I knew I was doing what was best for my birth daughter. I knew I was giving her a life that I could never give her. I mean, yeah, if you would have told me, look where I'm at now, the question I've always asked people was, do you think I'd be here today if I would have kept her? I mean, I wasn't really willing to put any of that at risk. I wanted better for her. So it came time for me to sign my rights over. This was basically stating I no longer had rights to her as a parent. That I was relinquishing all rights considerable. And what they had also told me was that her adoptive family may change her name, which I was completely fine with, because not many people know this. I kind of BS'd her name. I was like, this kid needs a name. So I kind of just blurted one out, which, if you know me, you know my daughter's, what her birth name was, and I'm not going to say that over a video. But, yeah. So, I was fine with that, and they were just encouraging me and telling me I was making the best decision. Because the truth of the matter was, I was 20 years old. No one knew I was pregnant. I didn't tell anybody in my family I was pregnant. If I can't own that, what makes you think I should be raising a child? If I couldn't own a simple thing as, hey, I'm pregnant, you know, kind of, to me, that was the dead giveaway of, yeah, probably not the best idea. But again, this is from my perspective and how I saw it. And it's really nothing I've talked about personally, except to a few people. The decisions I made were mine and mine alone. No one in my family forced me into this. My family has always been really supportive of anything I've wanted to do. Have always had my back. So when I signed my rights, they were willing to stand by my side. When I had to tell some people in my family, hey, by the way, I had a baby, they've always had my back. They've always understood. Yes, they may not understood why I made the decisions I made, but they've always been supportive of me. I've never been afraid to answer any questions about it. I'm completely open and honest about it. I'm comfortable with knowing the decision I made and the family I chose was right. And to be completely honest with you, this is kind of where my faith story also comes into play. Many people know I didn't have God in my life for the longest time until I had my birth daughter. She's kind of what led me back to God. Because for the first time after I had her, I went to him. I asked him to show me the right way. And he put signs. My birth daughter has the same last name as my godparents. the state she lives in, my boyfriend at the time saw a license plate with that same exact state. Just stuff we have in common matched up. Just a lot of things started to fall into place, and to me, I asked for a sign. I got them. And for her to be completely healthy and be to term, I mean, you can't tell me that's just coincidence. And that's kind of where my faith started. And why I'm as lucky as I am. But more about signing my rights. I will admit, after I signed my rights, I went home that night and I probably cried for a good 3 straight hours. I mean, I've been asked before, did I have any connection with my child? Yes, I did. I held her. I fed her. I bonded with her. It was that instant connection of, I made this. This is half of me. And, I made it look easy. But on the inside, I was really struggling. I was broken. I mean, but it's what I did with that brokenness. I chose to try to turn my life around. I chose to be better for my birth daughter. I still choose to try to be better for her. I try to make better decisions. I am not so quick to want to just jump into stuff and be like, oh, hey. I try to be a lot more careful about who I surround myself with. Because at any time, like I said, my birth daughter's adopted family can say, yeah, we choose not to have contact with you anymore because of the decisions you make. Which, like I've said, I don't think I've ever crossed that bridge, but I try to be careful and be honest about how I feel. And the very unique thing about this is, if you knew me at the time and a little bit after I had my birth daughter, me and my family had a very rocky relationship. My parents and I weren't really getting along, seeing eye to eye on stuff. We argued a lot. Most of our interactions were arguments. And I honestly believe God brought my birth daughter into my life to heal that. Because all of a sudden, it's like, bam, she was here. And my dad made the comment when he got home from his fishing trip, something's wrong with our family if she can't come to us and tell us she's pregnant. Something's wrong. We need to get back into church. And that basically led us to Restoration, which was called St. Barnabas at the time we went. But went there. We're going to try different churches every Sunday. Went back. And that's been my church family. And they've been supportive. At first I was not big into telling my story. But the more I got to know people, the more comfortable I got with it. And that's what basically led to this blog starting was I felt my story needs to be told. You know, I've always had it on my heart of to tell it. I just never was sure quite how to do it, but I believe everything happens for a reason. People come into your life for a reason, whether it be a season, a moment, or a second. It doesn't matter. They're there for a reason. The biggest lesson I've learned in all this was no matter how bad things get, if you can't turn to your family, you don't have anything. You know, my family's always been there, continues to always be there. No matter what shenanigans I get into or whatever I do, I know at the end of the day, they're always there. So, I guess I'll do a part 3 on kind of, you know, how the relationship works now that we're now 12 years into this. And go from there.